Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. I'm Angelos, and today I'm joined by Siam Kidd again. So welcome back, Siam.
Hi there, thanks for having me back.
So Siam's a full-time investor and trader and owns 7 profitable businesses and learned how to trade simply through hard trial and error. Siam has accurately called many crypto moves, which has made his community profits. But his personal best to date is the 2015 Black Monday crash, where he managed to make over £422,000 in 30 minutes, which is not bad going at all. In more recent times, Siam accurately called the January 18 Bitcoin crash, where he sold all his cryptos and then jumped back in the market at the lows, thereby accumulating a far better position. So I'm really glad to have you back, Siam, because you are a very knowledgeable person across many different fields, and you are an experienced business person. And today we're going to be talking about the pleasures and the pressures of business, because although a lot of people see business people as successful, they live in these rose-tinted view of what business is all about, with all these great profits and nothing ever gets them down, with great cars and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, there are many, many pressures when growing and starting a business and then sustaining it, right? So as we know, cash flow is the heartbeat of any business, and sometimes the pressures of business can really drag you down. And those pressures can even inflict serious consequences on people's lives. And unfortunately, in extreme circumstances, people can take the permanent route out of those problems and sadly take their own lives. So I'm really glad you're here today, Sam, to talk about this. Before we talk about dealing with cash flow and other pressures that people face, can we just explain to listeners at home why they even would want to start their own business and go down this road?
Business owners, are perceived to be really successful and whatnot. Actually, business owners, or let's say perceived successful business owners, are actually the biggest failures that you will ever see. So you look at Dragon's Den, Theo Pathetis, Peter Jones, these, titans of industry, they are the biggest failures you will ever meet. And what I mean by this is that to get to where those people are, they would have had to fail 1,000,000 times more than you. Elon Musk is my god. He has failed trillions of times more than I have. So I've got a good split test with this, actually. So when I was in the Air Force, my old boss and I had a bit of a gentleman's wager. So I decided to leave the Air Force prematurely to go into become a full-time trader, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, you're going to go bankrupt, blah, blah, blah. And we had a little bet so I managed to rustle up 24 grand. That was all I had at the time I left the Air Force. And he had 24 grand as well, which he was about to put into a house deposit. And he was like trying to get me to buy a house with him. Or not with him, but as well. And I was like, no. And basically, the wager was, I said, within 10 years, I'm going to be able to buy your house outright with cash and also be able to afford 10, 20 more houses. And you will still be paying your mortgage. And it was like a 50 quid bet. Like, he's probably forgotten about it. I haven't. But the thing is, the reason I think it's a pretty good split test is because we're 2 people with pretty much the same skills, same job, basically. Yes, he was more senior than me. But I know for a fact all the things he's failed at in life from then until now, which is pretty much nothing. I don't think he's failed at all. He's probably, his biggest failure, since then is forgetting to bring a pen to a meeting or something like that, right? So he's a boss of a squadron, so he's a great pilot. Yeah, he's probably made some minor mistakes when flying, but in the grand scheme of life, he's made no mistakes. He's played it safe. But fast forward to where I am now, I have won the bet. Like, I need to call on that 50 quid. I can buy I know he's still paying his mortgage, and I can buy his house outright. And what's the difference? The only difference is that I've literally failed a crap load more than he has. And that's all it is. I've got a mantra in life, which is Oh my lord, I forgot my mantra. I tell my kids this every night. Do, fail, learn, pivot. Okay? So I'm constantly doing. I do anything. I'm just constantly doing. I fail all the time, and that's expected, right? And because it's expected, failure is not an issue for me. It's like I treat it like a computer game. I'm a gamer. I freaking love computer games. So when you fail a level at a computer game, what do? You don't sit and cry in the corner. Oh, I failed the level, do you? You go, oh, that's a bummer. Okay, restart the level. Go. I know what not to do this time. And then eventually, even if you play the most hardest of computer games, you'll probably fail a level 100 times. But guess what? You'll get past it. So that's what I treat life like a freaking computer game. So do, fail, and every time you fail, you learn. And then the implementation of the learning point is pivoting. That's what a pivot is. You're pivoting in a different direction. Just imagine Ross from Friends going, that's me all day long. I'm literally Ross going, right. In fact, my staff in my office, some of them, we use Slack, and we've got like a group chat, and there's often many times I'm like, pivot in the business, and yeah, they put that gif out. So yeah, do, fail, learn, pivot. That's all you have to do. And if you can do that a lot faster than your peers, a lot faster than anyone that you're comparing yourself to, not that you should ever compare yourself to anyone, you'll out-accelerate people. I guess in flying, in the RAF, that there's a thing called the OODA loop, observe, orientate, decide, act. So all I've done is I've just pinched the OODA loop. So the OODA loop is basically do, fail, learn, pivot. So.
And obviously there's an element of risk behind all of those action takings, right? But unless you take those risks, you'll never know where you may end up, right?
So a lot of people avoid risk inadvertently. But let me rephrase this. When I say most people, I'm just going to say 99% of the population, okay? So most people rapidly or chronically avoid risk, but what they're unaware of is that they're actually putting themselves into more risk. So the handy thing being a trader is that after a while you actually become a master of risk. If there's anything in life which I was actually really, really good at, it's actually risk, believe it or not. I never blow smoke up my own trumpet. I would always say I'm a good trader. I'm not a master trader. I'm a slightly above average business owner. I'm a good dad, but I am a master of risk, and that's the thing that you get as trading. You fully understand risk to reward ratio, right? So it's like a little seesaw. Let's put this on my microphone here. There's risk over here.
Reward.
Say ruin.
No, we don't want ruin. Definitely not ruin.
In trading, there's a term called risk of ruin. So yeah, that's part of risk. So the risk of ruin. What is the probability that you're going to absolutely destroy yourself, or destroy your account, halve your account? And yeah, so put it this way: I've created a thing called the desire for gain gizmo and fear. My lord, I didn't have much sleep last night. Fear of loss gremlin, desire for gain gizmo, right? You remember the film Gremlins? Yeah. I don't know if yeah. So your desire for gain, this cute little Furby type gizmo thing is something that no one ever listens to, right? Everyone is always running away from the fear of loss gremlin. So they're like, oh, I'd like to be a millionaire, but in order for that to happen, I'd need to set up a business, do blah, get into property, whatever it may be. But they look at all the risk and they go, oh my lord, if I go and try and buy this house. Are you a property investor?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So imagine that the typical newbie property investor who's never bought a house, they're like, oh, I want to get into property investing, but what is the risk? I get my life savings, put it into a house, and I think I get it BMV, and oh my lord, this negative equity, no one's buying it. And so they look at all that risk and they think, okay, I'm just going to avoid that. But people forget that by avoiding that modicum of risk, oh yeah, it may be a huge risk that they're taking, then always negating themselves from the reward. And in trading, the average So one of my hard and fast rules is that I always take a 3R trade, okay, minimum. So when I say a 3R trade, what I mean is, if I'm risking £1,000 on a trade, I need to make sure that if that trade is a winner, I make £3,000 profit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I risk £1,000 and I lose £1,000, that's called a -1R outcome, right? So the worst I could lose is -1R, and my minimum win will be 3R, right? Now, every now and again, probably once every 5 years, I come across a trade or an investment or a business which is like 20R. Okay, so put £1,000 in, it's going to make me £20,000. And probably once a decade, I will in trading, once every 5 years, so I'll come across 1 in 20, sort of 20 to 50R trade, which is great. In business, every 2 years or so, I come across a business opportunity that'll turn into like 1,000 or a 10,000R outcome, which is unreal. So when you're looking at the risk to reward, it's like, do I risk £1 over here to potentially get 10 grand over here, or do I risk? And people don't understand R multiples. That's the crazy thing. So by not getting into business, setting up that kebab shop or setting up that whatever business idea you have, you're always running away from the desire for getting gizmo. And what that will do is then basically force you into a life of mediocrity.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, I'll shut up now.
It's fine. I was just going to give you a little bit of a thing on. You mentioned gremlins, and you never feed them after midnight, right?
Correct.
So my question to you: what time can you feed them? Because it's always past midnight.
Haha. Yeah. Good point. Just there's a saying that which is the biggest beast? It's the one that you feed, right?
Yeah.
And we always feed the fear of loss gremlin. We're always, every time you run away from something, you're giving it ammunition, you're giving it fear. And it's not just external fear of food that you're feeding it, it's internal. The most damaging thing that happens as a result of running constantly is what goes on up here. So self-confidence, I believe, is one of the most critical things that you can develop, which will actually set you up for life, okay? Not just business itself. It will massively help for business. And when I say self-confidence, I don't mean being a cocky prick, being a Billy Big Balls, full of yourself, etc. That's different. It's the quiet self-confidence that really makes a difference. So, for example, I had a chat with an old school friend, right? So I hadn't seen him for about 15 years, and we're having a beer or whatever after 10 hours of drinking or whatever. And he was like, "You know what, Simon? You're slightly more full of yourself these days than you used to be." Because we're talking about business and all that stuff, and I was sort of taken aback. I was like, "Well, that's odd, because I'm actually pretty humble. I think I'm humble anyway." And then I was like, okay, well, do you mind if we dissect this? Do you mind if we go into this? And, and I was trying to probe him. Why? What have I said? What have I done that makes him feel that I'm slightly cocky or whatever it may be? It may have been the alcohol talking, who knows? So, but yeah, he said, oh, you just seem so sure that what you say you're going to do, you're going to do. And I'm like, well, yeah. And the way that I have unwavering self-confidence is because, in my opinion, I probably need to write down one of those stupid business equations, self-confidence equals blah. But for me, it's the little things that you promise to yourself. Okay, so for example, if you, let's say you're going to draw a line in the sand and go, right, I'm going to work on my self-confidence for the next 3 months. Okay, so what you need to do is start really, really tiny, really, really small, and start setting yourself tiny mini promises. Okay, mini promises. So it could be, like, for example, I'm a massive junk food fiend. I've got, like, bloody chocolate wrappers all over my desk. It's like, so for me, it could be, right, today is now, midday-ish. For the rest of the day, I'm not going to have another chocolate bar. I go through about 3 chocolate bars a day. It's ridiculous.
I feel your pain, man. I feel your pain. It's the voices. I can't not hear them,
Yeah. So a little mini promise will go, right, Siam, today you're not going to have any more chocolate bars, okay? There's no reward, there's no gift or prize at the end of it. You're just going to not have one for the rest of the day. Now, let's say I go for the rest of the day and I don't have a single chocolate bar. What I've done there mentally is I've set myself a task, a goal, and I've accomplished it. Boom. Next day, set myself another one. It could be, hell, it could be, right, go 24 hours without a chocolate bar. But what I would do, I wouldn't silo down the promises. I would have a broad breadth of promises. So it would be, right, today I'm not going to have a chocolate bar, and I'm also going to make my bed within 20 seconds of waking up, right? Mm-hmm. That would be my 2 little promises for the day. Boom, I've done that. Now, over the space of 3 months, or hell, 3 years, depends how disciplined you are, if you start building and escalating the self-promises you make to yourself, what happens is you start to trust yourself, okay? So I'm not a psychologist, but this is what from my limited reading on this, I've probably only spent 20 hours reading psychology books, or in terms of Audible. But how I see it, how I understand it, is that people with self-confidence issues, some people, not all people, it's probably because they don't actually trust themselves deep down, okay? So they're like, yeah, I'm going to set up a business, but they know they're not, because deep down they know they're not actually going to do anything, about it. But for me, because I've been working on this continually for about 7 years, really, I jumped on the whole self-help wagon 7 years ago. And self-confidence was one thing I did actually struggle with. I was an ex-Air Force pilot, and you would have thought that you'd be pretty confident being, and yeah, I was confident in some areas, but other areas I wasn't. Like money, not confident. Business, definitely wasn't confident. So now I can set myself the most ridiculous of goals, like, for example, I'm in the process of setting up a school for the future, okay? So I think all schools are shit. I'm setting my own one up because my kids are 1-year-old and 3-year-old, so I need a school for them to go to because I don't trust any school, not even private schools. So I've got this lofty goal where, this school with no GCSEs, no A-levels, no tests or exams, all that sort of stuff. And I know I'm going to achieve it, okay? I know I'm going to achieve it plus or minus a couple of years. So what I do is I have this big chunky, so I've got this big chunky goal over here, which if most people look at that and go, oh, screw that, I'm not even going to bother. But what I do is you just got to break goals down into small chunky things. So I go, right, for this to happen, what needs to happen? I call it sort of a goal galaxy, actually. So I'll put it here, and then I'll basically put like spiral things. So and each chunky goal, your big crazy goal will have probably 6 mini chunky goals. And then those 6 mini chunky goals probably spin out 10 each. So when you've properly goal galaxied the whole thing, you'll probably end up with like 100, at least 100 mini things. Right? And then it's like, okay, well, in order to get this crazy goal, all I need to do is nail these 100 tasks. Now, even the most simplest of tasks will probably take a month or a week or a whole day. It depends on what the task is. But what you now know is you do these 100 things, you hit your goal. So then you start simple project managing. You go, right, how long is this mini goal going to take? And whatever you think it's going to take, just double it. Okay, so humans, again, neurologically, psychologically, we have this stupid thing when it comes to timetabling, right? If you put in your calendar, oh yeah, I need to send some emails to my clients, right? You think, oh, it's probably going to take an hour. Guess what? It never takes an hour. It takes 2 hours because you dick about with cat videos on YouTube, or someone calls you on the phone, some time vampire bugs you, and all of a sudden you're caught into some stupid Facebook thread. I don't know, whatever it may be. So yeah, whatever task, this mini task, double the time. So now you've mapped out the time requirement for all those 100 mini tasks. So you're like, holy shit, okay, if I'm going to do this all on my own, it's going to take me 10 years to do, okay? So worst case scenario, I'll just beaver on myself and I'll hit my goal in 10 years. But now you know the time requirement, the time cost. So now I go, right, if I want to do this in 5 years or 3 years, that means I need 5 members of staff doing 40 hours a week, blah, and I hit my goal, yeah. So now whenever I say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, it's not me being cocky. I've mapped out the whole thing.
But the thing is, Simon, is that others, I've had this recently, it's quite an interesting one, because it took me aback a bit. So I'm on a big project at the moment. I call it Phase 2 in honour of Marvel. And I'm buying lots of blocks of flats at the moment, refurbing them, bringing them up to really high standard. Yeah, me too. That's another podcast. And I was talking with someone about it the other day. Now, I enjoy the adventure. I've built this mountain. I am now climbing over the mountain, and then at the end of it, I'm going to have my little flag at the top, and then reevaluate what I'd like to carry on doing. Go on another adventure, or go off and grow other things. And someone said to me, it's very impressive, Angelos, but who are you trying to impress? I was like, there's no one I'm trying to impress. That's a really weird concept for me, because we care what others think, regardless of what people say, our friends, our family, and whatever else. But it's whether you allow it to affect you. For me, it's all about achieving the goal. It's all about achieving the mission, right? Almost like a military campaign. You don't go on a military campaign just to impress someone. You do it because you have clear objectives, and those clear objectives, like you've said, are written on my whiteboard. I look at it every day. It's there. It cannot escape. This is the mission now, and to hell with everything else that gets in the way. And this is how I see the things. It's not necessarily to impress someone, but it's to achieve the goal that I've set myself, whether it's cash flow, whether it's equity, whatever it is, that's what you're doing, and similar to yourself. So how do we go then, Siam, from having this great goal, this exciting time of setting up your business, to a few years down the line where people are considering, in extremes, ending their lives? I know recently you've shared a story of a friend who sadly took their lives because of these pressures. How does it reach that point? What went wrong without going into too many details, with your friend?
So, obviously I can't share too much because it wouldn't be good for him or his family, etc. But long story short, I guess, he did the typical thing. So he wanted more in life. So he, this is probably what he got into business probably about the same time I did, about 7-8 years ago. And he wanted to do more. He had a girlfriend, then turned into a wife, then turned into 2 younger daughters. And the thing is, so for him, he didn't have like a proper job anyway. So like he wasn't like quitting, a well-paid job. Like he was like, right, okay, need to get into business. And unfortunately, he picked a business model, which at the time I didn't know any better, so I couldn't say whether it was good or bad. But now, on hindsight, I'm like, God damn, that is not a business you should be doing as your very first business. It was a massive J-curve business for a start. So what I mean by J-curve business is that if you look at the profit equity line over time, it looks like a J. So what happens, however, I don't know how the camera's going to put this. So from day one, let's take a restaurant, probably a typical example of a really bad J-curve business. You plow 150 grand into the business, right? Your profit will, so like from day one, you're minus 150 grand at least. And then you're hoping in year 3, 5, or 10 you break even, and then hoping from there on it then goes in profit. So it's a J-curve business. What tends to happen with most J-curve businesses is that you plow whatever money in, so you're down into the negative bit, and you never hit profitability. You never even hit break even. So what people do is they go down, and then they get shat out of the bottom, and then they leave. They're like, oh, I'm never doing business again, blah blah blah. Anyway, he embarked on this ridiculous J-curve business. I'm not going to say what industry it was, so probably give it away for some people that may know me. And he never hit profitability. He never hit break even. And because he was relying on his mortgage, all of his outgoings from this business, he made some really poor decisions, right? So when your back is against the wall and you're struggling to pay your mortgage, you're struggling to pay the utility bills, and by the way, him and I were in the same position at one point. I was about 3 to 6 months from bankruptcy, and you make the most ridiculous decisions, like when you can't pay your rent and you're having to pay, have a roof over your kids or whatever. So now, okay, so people won't know who I'm talking about, so it's fine. So this is where he actually did something a bit bad. So he crossed, I guess, a bit of a moral line. So he had a bad customer, right? Who turned out to be a really bad customer, like a criminal type person. And before he knew it, he, just trying to facilitate this customer, he got caught up in something. And he was like, oh, I need to get out of it. So I didn't know this till years later. And then basically he was head over in heels, and the business wasn't profitable, and so he had to go bust. And he did a typical. So not only did he owe money to the bank, he owed money to this freaking criminal, who's basically a loan shark, right? So he went bust. He lost his business, everything. He went personally bankrupt, but the thing is, you don't just, when you're personally bankrupt, all your legitimate debts go away, right? Do you think a loan shark debt goes away no? So it's an even deeper spiral, and then he tried to phoenix the business, set up the same business, but without any of the overheads. That went all right, and so long story short, he never got out of this misery. And so this particular scenario it's probably a bit extreme, because I know there are many other people out there who are feeling suicidal, who don't have a loan shark breathing down his neck, threatening to break his wife's legs or whatever like that. I mean, that he was a bit of a pickle there. And the best way I can explain his situation is, on Netflix right now, there's an absolutely amazing box set called Good Girls. Okay, Natasha Hendricks is like the main character. It's basically 3 housewives that get in head over heels. Definitely watch it. Good Girls. You'll binge it. It's so good. Anyway, how they got head over heels in that thing is pretty similar to this guy. But anyway, so long story short, after 7 years of trying to get out of bother, like he just couldn't ever get his business profitable, and he kept having to phoenix the businesses, which is a bit dodgy in itself, and in the end he did the worst thing. Now, the thing is, like, I didn't know he was that far down the road, if you know what I mean. Like, and when I say friend, yeah, he was a friend. I knew him for over 10 years, but in the last 5 years, I probably met up with him once a year, once every 18 months. Just life gets busy. Like, I've got kids, he's got kids. Like, everyone's got friends you sort of drift away from. But I think I don't think he was properly mapping out everything. And I said to him, because I think you sort of connect the dots later down the line. I remember one day we were actually talking about suicide. I didn't think it was about him. He's brought it up. I think he was just testing the water with me. And I said something like, yeah, suicide, God, it's like probably the most selfish thing you could ever do. Right? I was just saying, what I thought, I didn't really think about it. And he sort of was taken a bit back by that. And even though I still do feel it is pretty selfish, I can somewhat see the other side, because I've been in some pretty down dumps myself. But that suicide thing has never entered my mind, and the reason being is that, like, I think one thing that separated my low with his low is that I have a thirst for life, if that makes sense, and he's never really had that. So I've got a really curious mind. Okay, so if you could wave a magic wand that would make me digitally immortal or organically immortal, whatever, I don't think I'd ever kill myself. I really don't, because I'm driven by trying to fulfill my potential. So every day I wake up and go, right, have I hit my max potential? The answer is always no. And I don't think you'll ever hit your full potential, because you're always learning. And the more you learn, the more you realise you don't know jack shit. And so I'm always thinking, right, okay, I need to keep on growing. So I don't think I'll ever and I'm always curious. Like, I love tech. I always want to see, okay, what's tech going to be like tomorrow, next year? So I have a thirst for knowledge. I'm always learning. He didn't have that. So I think for me, that's like a massive tether into the world, like, as in to never pull that trigger, basically. So I cannot see me ever doing that, no matter how bad things get. And also, going back to the selfish issue, you just have to try and... I map out I map out everything. Okay, I do, he didn't. And if you would, you know, slop yourself, just map out what happens next. One, you leave an absolute shit show of a mess to clear up for your loved ones to clear up, right? Not only, you know, financial problems and stuff, like you're properly leaving your loved ones in the lurch, okay? And I know if anyone's listening to this who is feeling down, they're probably thinking, yeah, but my situation's so bad. But the thing is, it's not that bad to take your own life. Like, how can I put this?
Sometimes I guess we need perspective, right?
Yeah, like, perspective is the big thing. So I always look at things on a cosmic level. It's a bit geeky. We are literally space monkeys floating through space. We are alive shorter than a relative fruit fly. Like, the Earth is, 13.4 billion years old. Homo sapiens been around 200,000 years. Modern civilization's been around 10,000 years. You've been around, 30, 40 years. Ignoring technology, you're going to live, call it 100 years. We are so insignificant, it's ridiculous. So humans will look at two pigeons having a fight, right, on a tree. And what are those pigeons fighting for? They're probably fighting over a stick. As humans, we're like, that's funny, that's so silly, that's so insignificant. Those two pigeons are fighting over a stick. For those pigeons, that stick's life and death, isn't it? Right? So as humans, we have perspective that's really insignificant. So what I always try to do is try and think on a cosmic level. I always look at, it's a bit sad, a bit weird, but I try and look at the Earth sometimes as though what a super intelligent alien would do humans. And there's us. We're like monkeys playing around with make-believe money. Like, we're the only animal species on the planet that deals with money, right? Which is an invention we made up. What is money? Well, the stuff in your pocket, that's just bits of metal you dig out of the ground, and the paper bit, or sorry, paper, it's plastic, but call it paper. It's no different than monopoly money. And 97% of all money on the planet is actually ones and zeros that has been created out of thin air. So when you look at money problems, it's like, okay, you're getting all het up about monopoly money. Now, I know that's a very flippant thing to say, because money actually rules the world. Like, yes, it's made up, but you still have to pay your mortgage, you have to pay your taxes, you have to pay your loan shark. So it is a big deal, I'm not saying that. But the thing is, let's just say you're not in a bad situation as money, and you have legitimate, like, legal, non-illegal problems, let's say, and you owe loads of people money. Okay, let's roll this forward and go, right, what is the worst case situation? What is the worst case situation? The worst case situation is you lose your business, you lose all your money, all your life savings. Even worse, let's say you're barred as a director for 5 years. I mean, it's very rare that you get banned as a director, but let's say you accidentally mistrade. I don't know. So you're banned as a director for 5 years. You lose everything. You're basically you're sin binned for a year financially. Basically, all debts are wiped clean, and you can't do anything for a year, pretty much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you do in that year? Okay, you regroup, you get a job, and you just get your head down. And the things that actually matter in this world, remember, we are just little pigeons fighting over sticks. The things that actually matter in your life are your loved ones, right? The worst thing you could ever do to them is kill yourself. Like, that's just my opinion, okay? I'm sure probably there's a whole bunch of people thinking this is bollocks, and, you know, but...
So from your own experience then, Simon, because you've mentioned you have faced you've looked at the abyss, shall we say, and I guess there are times in many businesses where the director looks at it and goes, bloody hell, man, how do I come back from here? And I think from my own perspective, it's just, you know, sometimes you have your pity party for a day, and then you regroup.
For a day or a year.
Yeah, or however long you need. Yeah, however long you need and is right for you. And then it's important to speak with others to get their perspective, because they're outside, they can look in and look at us fighting over the little sticks. And then put together a plan and write down that plan and remind yourself of the why you started. Now, perhaps the why has changed over the years and it's no longer important. Perhaps it is time to walk away before it becomes more serious. But sometimes you just need to step back out, look at it from a top-down perspective and go, actually, there is a solution. It's probably going to be very difficult for the next year or two or however long it takes, but there is a path forward. I just need to just realign a little bit rather than carrying on down this certain path. So when people face these extreme pressures, Simon, which I'm sure you have faced in your past, what can they do to seek help? What worked for you? What pulled you back from the abyss?
Yeah. Again, risk to reward. I'm always looking at that seesaw, the risk to reward seesaw. Again, perspective is so true. For example, debt-wise, if you go bankrupt, personally bankrupt, you're sin-binned for a year, basically. It may take you a couple of years to get financially back in your feet, but let's say you're going to live 100 years from birth to death. Well, what is 5 years in your whole life? It's nothing, is it? No one gives a shit if you've ever been personally bankrupt. Most of the millionaires you've probably seen out there have been bankrupt. So what if you have to put a business under? My first proper business, I had to liquidate. I just couldn't get any sales. I had to wind it down. Like, at the time, I thought my life, I was the massive egg on my face. I told all my friends and family, I'm quitting this really high-paid, lovely job, being an Air Force pilot. Which I spent my whole life trying to get to. I was sacking it all in to become a full-time trader and business owner and all that. And then guess what? My first proper business goes bust. Like, yeah, the shame, the agony, the egg on my face, and all that sort of bollocks. Like, yeah, at the time, I was crying myself in a corner. Like, I couldn't think of anything worse. I thought, everyone's laughing at me. But at the end of the day, like, everyone is too focused on their own shit that they don't even notice what's going on. So what if you have the most public business shambles, right? Everyone's going to forget it within a month or two, okay? Unless you're someone like Bernie Madoff. But, like, even still, it's irrelevant. Like, the only things that matter in your life, really, are your loved ones. Like, just imagine, like, for me, everything revolves around my two little boys. So just plan out, like, okay, let's say you sort yourself. How is that going to affect your kids for the next 40, 50 years of their lives?
And how many questions will they ask themselves?
Yeah.
It's this constant shadow over. Yeah.
Like so here's another thing to remember, that like a lot of people. So I fell into this trap myself. So being maybe a somewhat cocky military person, I used to look at depression going, oh, only weak people have depression. Just man up, man the F up, right? That's the typical military sort of ethos, right? You bury everything, have a false, puff out your chest, everything's all right. And that's why PTSD is a big thing, because, anything you suppress grows, basically. I'm sure there's a better way to put it, but yeah, if you ever suppress anything, it will always oppress at some point. It will grow. And
it may not be in the immediate, right? It may occur 10, 20, 30 years long, and you won't even realise where it's come from.
Yeah, you won't know. It will grow, it will linger. It's very insidious. It'll be like cancer, mental cancer. But the thing is, depression, the more you read into it, it's actually two things. It's a chemical imbalance and it's a psychological imbalance. But it's the chemical imbalance that causes the psychological imbalance, right? So you can't get someone who's, full on depressed and go, just snap out of it. Just snap out like an airplane. Like, it's not going to happen. They got so much cortisol in their body, it's ridiculous. So if you look at the two main sort of stimulus, like you have cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and it has a really long tail. So you have loads of cortisol, and then it takes a long time to get out of the system. Whereas dopamine, so like that, boom, like that little sharp, loud noise, that's basically just spat a whole bunch of dopamine into your system right now. You go, well, what the hell is this Siam person doing? Like, it's like a little dopamine comes up and then it exits the system straight away.
Yeah.
But when you're depressed because of a reason, money problems, wife problems, husband problems, whatever it may be. And you have a thing called your RAS, your reticular activating system, right? So when you buy a Mercedes car, all of a sudden every other freaking car on the road is a Mercedes, yeah? That's that sort of filter. That's called your RAS. So when you're woe is me, down in the dumps, everything's going wrong in my life, guess what you're doing to your RAS? You're configuring your RAS to detect all the other shit that's happening in your life. So you spill milk over your over yourself when you're pouring a cup of tea, guess what? You're going to exaggerate that. You're going to, oh my God, worst start of my day ever, blah, like, and then that's just going to compound. So, yeah, you can't just shake someone out of depression. So you have to understand it's a chemical imbalance. And the way to get rid of that, like, I mean, it's all very well in saying, like, before you commit your suicide, go through this checklist. Have you done yoga? No. Have you done meditation? Have you drunk loads of water today? Have you done any exercise? Have you done, like, one, you won't get a depressed person to do all of those things. So sometimes it will take a close friend and family to force them to go into a float pod. By the way, flotation therapy is really good for depression. It really is. I know I own a float center, a bit biased, but it's really good for that. So you won't do that. Like, my dad has been chronically depressed all his life. Will he ever go on holiday? No. Will he ever float? No. He'll never do any of those things unless I actually force him. And, like, that's just not going to happen. He'll go kicking and screaming. So he won't even be in the right mindset to even do any sort of meditation. Like, what is this bollocks? I'm not doing this, blah, blah, blah. So I think, realigning that person's why and giving someone a cause. What you find is humans without a cause or a mission tend to wander.
Yeah.
So
they need that hope, right? That hope of achieving the success and having a plan and moving forward.
Herd animals.
Yeah, man. You gotta have you gotta have that mission. You gotta drive towards something. Otherwise, you just drift. And when you get bored and you stay at home, and then suddenly all these thoughts start entering your mind, and it like you said, it's insidious because it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a period of weeks, months, years, and you think, how the hell did I get here?
Yeah, I think and I think another. Again, going back to perspective, probably one of the best things I've had in my life, which has probably given me this self-pity shield. Like, I don't really, if I'm ever in a self-pity state, it'll never last more than a day. And that's because my mum is Thai and my dad's English. And so, being half Thai, I spent a fair bit of time in Thailand as a kid. Now, my mum was born into, like, you think UK poverty, it's really bad. You don't know shit. Like, go to the poorest parts of Thailand or Africa or Southeast Asia and you'll see what real poor is like. So my mum was born into literally shanty hut poverty where no running water, no electricity, you had literally leaves for a roof, proper Ray Mears sort of shit. You had to fish every day to eat. And if you're a good fisherman or fisher person, you'd catch more fish than you needed to eat, so then you can sell some of that fish. The money from that extra fish, you can then go and buy some extra things like milk or whatever. That's real poverty. So my mum used to always take me back to her village, which isn't even on a map. You won't find it on Google Earth. Like, it's literally still a tiny little village, still no electricity. And the thing is, you spend a couple of weeks around those people there, you'll know what real life necessities are. And it will humble you. And here's the craziest thing. They are the happiest people you'll meet on the planet. They are the happiest people I know. Like, and they got nothing. They've just got their daily fish, and they are the happiest people ever. Now, why is that? Like, and when you analyse that, it's because, one, they don't know what an iPad is, right? So they're not been ruined by modern tech.
What, they're not yearning for the latest iPhone XS, right?
No, they're yearning for, a type of fish that they haven't seen for ages, or but they're happy, and the reason they're happy is because they're around their family, and I guess they have a cause, they have a mission, and what you find in that village is that, they have the people who are good at fishing, so they fish for the village. Then you have other people that are really good at the rice fields. So everyone has their own mini mission. So now, whenever I'm in a self-pity, I go, dude, wake the hell up. What do you have right now, which is, you have hot running water. So every time I have a shower, I'm really grateful. I really am. I'm food. I've got freaking abundance of Snicker bars on my table right now.
Good taste. Good taste.
Yeah, Except the only thing that really pisses me off, I could get depressed about this, is look how small these.
I know, they've shrunk massively, man. I mean, come on.
Seriously.
Come on, Mr. Snickers.
I know.
Jesus Christ! Yeah, I mean, when I was a teenager, I'm going to share a story with you, Simon. Now, and perhaps going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but when I was 16, I was offered a job to work in London and in a bank in the city as an IT guy, and I thought, yeah, brilliant, I'll go for that. The only problem is that I didn't really have an interest in cooking because it's not something I've really ever had a passion for, and so I used to go. So this was in 2000, 2002. And I used to go to the local newsagent and I'd stock up on food. And for me, food was Mars bars, Snickers, Yorkies, all those kind of things. So I get a trolley and I just fill it. And I spent about £35 worth 20 years ago. So you imagine it's worth something. On chocolate and Fanta. And I decimate that in 2 days. And yeah, and it's no good, man. It's no good. But this is why I can appreciate how Snickers have very sneakily shrunk everything right down. But I'm just going to throw one last question at you. And if we can keep it fairly brief, because I know it will set you off. No, it's fine. Because it's a podcast in itself, and maybe we can examine it later on. But do you think, because you are probably more qualified than most to talk about money and the history of money, do you think what we have today in today's society, where effectively everyone is working for money, do you think money is a modern form of slavery?
100%. Do you know why we work 40 hours a week?
Go on.
It's because of the factories. So it all stems from the Industrial Revolution. So if you go back 250 years, hell, go back 100 years, 98% of the UK population were farmers, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, so let's go back to the Industrial Revolution, around mid-1800s. So we invented this new thing called a factory, right? With factory lines. We're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. We can actually print stuff, create stuff at mass. What do we need to make this happen? We need lots of obedient people that won't question anything, that'll do as they're told, to man the factory lines. Okay, how do we create those people? Okay, let's create a school. Okay, so the whole schooling system is derived from the Industrial Revolution, as everyone's heard by now. But what they found in the early days of the factories is that they started off on people doing 80 to 100 hours a week. And they couldn't figure out why everyone kept dying after a couple of years. They're like, oh, this is annoying.
That's weird.
Sorry?
That's weird. Why are they dying?
Yeah. They're like, why are people dying after a couple of years? This isn't good. This is not good for, staff churn is never a good thing. So they're like, let's lower it. 60 hours. No, okay, it's probably elongated their life by a couple of years. Still not acceptable. And then they found 40. They're like, okay, we're onto something here. And so what's happened is that what they found by accident or no, by trial and error, is that if you force a human to work for 40 hours a week, Monday to Friday, but then give them 2 days off, they live for the weekend. They live for the weekend. And so they come back all fresh on Monday, dreading Monday, and then they do it all over again. And the factories found that they could con someone into this system for about 40 odd years and then get rid of them. Hence the 40-40-40 plan. You work for 40 hours a week for 40 years and then end up retiring on a pension 40% of what you struggled to live on in the first place. So that is where this whole modern day con comes from. So getting into business full stop, this is why I hate the schooling system. So you go to school to get grades you don't really care, so you can get into a uni that you don't really give a shit about, so you end up with a degree you didn't really want anyway, to end up with a job that you don't really like, and then to work doing the 40-40-40 plan. So so going back to risk to reward ratio, if you're not trying to embark on business or to get a more efficient income source, you are condemning yourself to the 40-40-40 plan, which is the worst financial plan one can ever do. Whereas what I tend to say to people getting into business is, over time, I'm pretty sure most people could rustle up £5,000 in the UK, that is. So you don't need £5,000 now, you just need 500 quid now, maybe 1,000. So what I go is, right, imagine you have £5,000, chop it up into 10. So you now have 10 bullets in your chamber. Each bullet is 500 quid. Now, what you need to do is go, right, looking at statistics, 9 out of 10 businesses startups fail in the first year, then another 9 out of 10 fail over the next 5 years. So it's like, right, statistically, if you set up at least 10 businesses, one of them is going to work, right? So use each 500 quid bullet. Now, if you're really slow learning, you're not doing do, fail, learn, pivot. If you're ignoring the learn and the pivot bit, yeah, you may fail 10 times. Who knows? But if you're got an average head on you, you're probably going to fail 4 or 5 times, and it will be lucky number 6, lucky number 7, or whatever. And all of a sudden, that business will do well. Now, let's define well. Well, let's be pessimistic in success. Okay, so let's say you have a business that does poorly, but somewhat a poor success. Let's say, and let's say that business brings in 60 grand a year. Yeah, for a business that's not much. Okay, so and take home, let's say, so that's 5 grand a month take home. Now, for most people, they work 40 years and they don't get 5 grand a month take home, right? So look at the risk to reward on that. Let's say this 60 grand a year business lasts for 5 years. Okay, I've got my calculator here. So 60 grand a year times 5, that's 300 grand, right? So you're basically got 5 grand, 10 bullets of 500 quid. So yeah, basically the risk to reward ratio here is you're risking 5 grand and some time and effort to potentially make 300 grand. What is our multiple on that? So 1 second, 300,000 divided by 5 grand, that's a 60R trade. Like, come on. And by the way, if you can get a business that you can get to 60 grand a year profit, guess what? You've just done the hardest bit. Going from 5 grand a month to 10 grand a month take home, that's a lot easier than going from 0 to 5. So yeah, come up with a business idea or project or a concept, put no more than 500 quid into it, test it, get research it, get focus groups, whatever it may be, and then try and scale from there. If it doesn't work, yeah, don't even call it a business. Don't tell your friends either. Just call it a project. Projects come and go.
Treat it as an experiment, which could have a happy ending, and then that way you're not so emotionally involved in it. You obviously want it to succeed, but if you do see it not working so well, draw a line underneath it, move on to the next one. And I think that's the important thing here as well. It's just when it's your business, it's Siam, it's Angelos, what's the public perception going to be? And like you said earlier, no one really gives a crap, because not only people are caring about themselves, genuinely. Yes, okay, it'll be news for a day or so, and then what? Life goes on, man. You just got to pick yourself up and keep going again. But I think sometimes when you are the CEO of your company, whatever it is, you care too much, and that's where having the perspective comes into it. And
I have so many trolls, and it still gets to me. I know I shouldn't. Almost on a daily basis, I have to go, Siam, on average, 20 to 30 people will be at your funeral. And even the 20 to 30 people at your funeral, probably only 5, maybe 10 people will be crying. So when you put that into perspective, you're like, shit, in my whole life of 80, 100 odd years, doing everything I'm going to do, let's say maybe 50 people come to my funeral, and probably only 10% of them will actually care enough that they'll cry.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit if some troll says you're a con artist or you're whatever, the bad things people say about me or whatever. Like. And
the thing is, Simon, we all get haters, right? I had a hater a few weeks ago when I gave a presentation, which was a really interesting one. I'll talk to you about it privately. It's funny, but also disturbing at the same time, the way that they think. But it's all about your reaction to it. You can hear the words, and you make a choice as to whether you allow it to penetrate down and affect your thinking. And that's the way I see things. Now, unless I'm genuinely doing something wrong and it's valid criticism, I will always listen to that and make a judgment call on whether I improve. But if it's an attack on your character or your whatever it is, let them say what they like. Let your success be the thing that defines you. And that's why I'm really not too worried about what people say. And I think that should be the case for most people. But we are human beings at the end of the day. We all have emotions, well, most of us do. And, sometimes it does get to you. But I always say to these people, let's have a drink. If you have a valid criticism, let's talk about it face to face. And suddenly the keyboard warriors aren't so strong and so noble anymore. But that, unless you are creating something good, Siam, you will inevitably attract the haters. And unfortunately, they go hand in hand. And all you can do is just carry on being Siam and carry on being the best you possibly can be.
Yeah, exactly. And the next time you have a decision to make, whether you quit your job, you don't quit your job, do this business, don't quit this business, like I have a filter in my head that I run through all the time when it comes to a decision. I got it really from the Air Force. So, what is the worst case situation? Am I going to die or is someone else going to die? No. Okay. Am I going to get hurt or is someone else going to get hurt? No. Am I going to jail or is someone else going to jail? No. Well, then freaking do it. Like, they are the three worst things that can happen, right?
Yep.
Like, no one's going to get hurt, no one's breaking the law, well, then freaking do it.
Or as long as you don't have to drop the soap anywhere. That will probably be my fourth one. I don't want any surprises like that. Anyway,
Trying to avoid jail.
Yeah, try and avoid jail. Yeah, and if you do have to go there, just tie it to you very closely. So, all right, mate. Well, look. To wrap up, how can people get in touch with you? Perhaps they've been inspired by your story. Perhaps they want to reach out and just talk with you. How do they get in contact?
In context of this podcast, I would highly recommend going to www.thewap.org, and WAP is WAP.org. And that is basically, it's like a little financial gym for your mind. So what happened basically is in 2018, in the space of about 8 months, I wrote 400,000 words. I was like freaking Bruce Almighty on my keyboard. And I wrote 400,000 words. I then chopped up those 400,000 words into 5 to 10 minute, or into 1,000 word slots, basically. And 1,000 words of me narrating is normally 5 to 10 minutes, really. And I turned all of those 400,000 words into animated videos. So we now have hundreds of animated videos. And what the WAP is, the Wealth Action Plan, is every single day you get a new video. And at the end of each video, there's like a learning points and then action point for today. And it starts off really small. So it starts off with like personal finances and then money, investing, then eventually gets into how to set up your part-time online-based business, and then grow that, etc. And so, yeah, you'll have a daily video. And I think it's cheap as chips. It's 27 quid a month, but it's like a few coffees a month. Like, I mean, people have a Sky, Netflix subscription, gym, or whatever, and this is like basically 90p a day for basically nutrition for your mind. And yeah, I would highly recommend it.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you, Siam. And thanks again, mate, for joining us. I think you and I could probably talk for days on so many different weird and wonderful stuff, and it would be great to have you back again.
Sorry if I've been rambling on.
No, definitely not. Ramblings of a very wise man, so cheers, Siam. We want to know your thoughts at home. Perhaps you've encountered various pressures in your business or your life, and you've overcome various problems. Please share, get in contact at hello@yoursuccesspodcast.com. Obviously, if you are facing serious problems in your life, reach out to loved ones or contact the Samaritans and check out Siam's site as well. Get in contact with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the whole lot. We're all out there. We'd love to hear your feedback. Perhaps you've been inspired by what Siam's been talking about today. And I've been Angelos, and I'll see you again on the next exciting episode of Your Success Podcast. Cheers, guys.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.